Hi, today we're going to be talking about plant risk management. My name is Michael Terry, I'm from Momentum Safety and Ergonomics, and this is the 5-Minute Safety Series. Okay, when it comes to identifying hazards associated with plant, we must consider all the different parts of the plant's life cycle and all the different operations. It really is quite a comprehensive process to go through, thinking about all the potential hazards that might be associated with an item of plant. Because you've got to think about all the things that the plant does. So it might be something that has a mechanical process, but it might also have heat and noise, manual tasks, and all sorts of different hazard types. So it's a comprehensive process. And then you've got to think about, okay, what do we use it for as far as just general use, cleaning, maintenance. All these things are areas of a plant's life cycle and operations which could present hazards. So your hazard identification process is a really key part of this process, and if you miss something right back here, you're not going to assess the risk, and there's a good chance you're not going to control that risk appropriately. So invest a bit of time in identifying your hazards nice and clearly. Once you do that, you can then go ahead and do your risk assessment. Now, the risk assessment process is not particularly complex, but we do recommend that you use a specific plant risk assessment process or form or system. It'll just help you to be a little bit more comprehensive and not miss stuff. And as we said, once you identify the hazards, then the risk assessment should follow along and consider all those particular lifestyle aspects. So storage, maintenance, disposal, those sorts of things all become critical when it comes to making sure your plant is risk assessed adequately. So you go ahead, you do your risk assessment, and then you're going to jump in and put controls in for all those risks that are not at an acceptable level. As per every other hazard, we are going to consider our hierarchy of control here. So we'll look at things like elimination. Do you really need to use this piece of equipment? The answer is probably going to be yes. Substitution. Is there a safer version of the same thing that does the same job but does it in a much less hazardous way? Engineering controls. There's going to be a variety of different engineering controls that concern all those different hazards that we talked about, which are parallel but integral to plant operation. But what I specifically want to talk about today is some of these more particular controls that are exclusive to plant. So you might talk about guarding. It's a really critical control for plant. There's various types of guards that you might consider, such as fixed guarding, which is permanently attached to the plant. It might be an interlocked guard, which is attached to a switch. So when you open a gate, for example, it switches the power off the plant. There might be presence sensing type guarding. So you have things like light curtains, for example. Light curtain is something that when your hand breaks the curtain, it stops the operation of the plant. There's specific requirements under the Code of Practice and Regulations to do with operator controls. So the controls that use must follow a certain familiarity, location. For example, clockwise is increase and anti-clockwise is decrease. It would be inappropriate to have a plant that worked differently. It would just present an increased level of risk. Specific types of plant must have emergency stops in place. This is a quick way of an operator stopping operation of the plant if something bad is starting to happen, and they've got to be those typical mushroom-shaped big red buttons that you can just hit and it'll stop it instantaneously. There's also oftentimes for larger plant you have isolation of energy requirements, so the ability for a plant to be locked. So let's say you had a large piece of plant that someone was working on, and it was big enough that the person who was working on it was invisible to an operator. That person who's doing the maintenance has got to be able to lock that thing out so that the person is not going to inadvertently turn it on, and that's called lockout, tagout. And also just above that, there's certain types of high risk licenses and plant registration that are required for certain types of plant. And you will get all of this information from the Plant Code of Practice and the Work Health and Safety Regulations. So we'll link to these in our description as usual, but For further information, you must consult with these documents. This is really just an overview of some of the requirements that are there. So there we go, guys. There's a quick summary of plant risk management. The main thing here, I think, is to be really comprehensive with your hazard and risk assessment process. The things I see go wrong here are people missing stuff right back at the start, and they don't put the controls in place because they just didn't see a particular hazard associated with cleaning it, for example. Once you've got those risk assessments in place, put your controls in, use the hierarchy of control, and refer to the code of practice for specific controls that are required for certain types of plant. Thanks for watching the 5-Minute Safety Series. If you felt like you got some value out of these videos, please click on the screen to see some of the other videos in the 5-Minute Safety Series, or otherwise feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel.